For the first time ever, Eddie Brock is Carnage's host. At the end of the Venom War grand finale, both Eddie and Carnage were fatally wounded upon coming in contact with each other, leaving them with no other choice but to bond together if they wanted to survive. But that might have been a huge mistake for Eddie, because in the first issue of their new series, it's clear just how much harder it is to keep Carnage under control compared to keeping Venom under control, as Eddie only wants to kill serial killers and Carnage wants to kill everybody he comes in contact with. Anyways, the first serial killer that Eddie was looking for was some guy regarded as the Hopscotch killer, who was apparently killing random civilians during layovers between flights and then carving weird grids into their flesh for some reason. So Eddie did some tracking and booked the same flight as him, but because he didn't know exactly what this murderer looked like, he was forced to read the minds of every passenger on the plane by jamming Carnage's tendrils into their brains, which eventually led him to the surprising conclusion that one of the pilots was the killer. So he broke into the cockpit with help from his new red pal, telling the pilot that his time was up and his days of killing were no more. But before he could get to him, he was sidetracked when the plane's air marshal began blasting him with her pistol out of belief he was trying to take over the plane, which not only allowed the Hopscotch killer to brutally murder his fellow pilot by jamming a knife into his neck, but also gave him an opportunity to sabotage the entire flight by cutting a bunch of wires on the control board. So without a single ounce of hesitation, Eddie grabbed him with Carnage's tendrils and ripped his body to shreds piece by piece, also admitting how good it felt to do so immediately after. Sooner or later, the plane began spiraling out of control though, and unless he acted fast, every one of the passengers would be dead soon. So to prevent that from being the case, he wrapped them up into a giant symbiote cluster thing and then jumped out of the plane to fly them to safety. Carnage, on the other hand, was absolutely disgusted by this gesture because the last thing he wanted to do was save people. So he got into Eddie's head to express that if killing just one person felt good, imagine how good killing a giant group of people would feel. Because Eddie wouldn't budge though, Carnage forced his way into full control of his body, which eventually made Eddie black out entirely. Later on, when Eddie came back to his senses, he started panicking after remembering all the people he was trying to save, so he confronted Carnage about it, demanding to know what he did with them. But not only did Carnage refuse to tell him what he did, but he also requested that the next serial killer they go after to be someone with powers, because he was actually evaluating them as potential hosts. And that's when he showed Eddie all of the potential candidates he was considering, like Silver Surfer, Galactus, Hela, and more. But sadly, that's when this issue comes to an end. But if you want to see what happens next, let me know in the comments down below.